Top officials in the Trump administration, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, appear to have texted plans for an upcoming bombing overseas to a group that included a journalist. Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine, says that he was included in a group chat about military strikes in Yemen. Those strikes happened on March 15th, and Goldberg says that he learned about them 2 hours before they happened. A spokesperson for the National Security Council says the messages in the group chat on Signal, an encrypted messaging app, appear to be authentic. A reporter asked President Trump about it this afternoon.
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis? Right. Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time.
An investigation to how that number was added to the chain is now underway. Well, today, a D.C. Court of Appeals heard arguments over the president's use of wartime powers to speed up deportations of immigrants. The case centers around a decision by Judge James Boasberg to issue a temporary restraining order blocking the use of the 1798 Alien Enemies Act. The judge wanted to determine whether the administration was warranted in invoking wartime authority to deport alleged Venezuelan gang members to El Salvador without due process. And for more on this, let's bring in former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson. He was also the first undersecretary of the Department of Homeland Security when it was created back in 2003. Governor, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. So if you would talk to us more about the Alien Enemies Act, which this case is centered on, and when was the last time it was actually invoked?
Well, the Alien Enemies Act only has been invoked 3 times in our history. One in the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. And if you remember, as history shows us, that in World War II, they rounded up the Japanese citizens or visitors here, put them in internment camps, and years later, they determined that that was wrong, and they actually gave them compensation. Those were internment camps here in the United States of America. Here you have the roundup of Venezuelans that are going to El Salvador. There's 2 requirements in the Alien Enemies Act. One, that there is a foreign country involved. Secondly, that there is an invasion or an incursion, military-type incursion into the United States. That allows the president to invoke it. He's done it this time, arguing that the cartels is the foreign government that's operated by Venezuela. It is a tenuous argument. Obviously, the district court judge had issues with that. I expect this to ultimately wind up in the United States Supreme Court.
Border Czar Tom Homan says that everyone that was sent down to El Salvador was a member of that gang, that TDA gang, that was labeled a terrorist organization by the Trump administration. However, I understand a number of family members of those that were deported, Mr. Governor, saying that no, they're disputing that these people weren't part of a gang. That said, what happens next? Do you think this will be looked into?
Well, I think it will be looked into. Obviously, the courts are very concerned about it because the court looks at individuals and whether they belong to the gang, whether they posed a risk, and whether they're rightfully detained. The administration is trying to look at this in broad terms. We want to round up all the gang members, and they're not worried about individualized process and due process. And so that's the conflict right here. Obviously, they're trying to solve a serious problem to our country. Gang violence, those that are undocumented coming here, creating havoc in our streets. But you've got to have, under our American system, some level of due process to make sure you do not round up the innocent with those that actually would be subject to that deportation effort. That is a conflict. That's something that courts are going to have to delve into, and they're not too excited about just accepting the border czar's argument. Well, they're all gang members. They actually want to have some level of proof and justification for that kind of detention and deportation.
Almost out of time here, sir. But how do you think this all shakes out? What are we looking at?
I think it'll go to the United States Supreme Court. I think it's a close call. I think, one, you affirm and say the Alien Enemies Act is constitutional. They have said that it's constitutional before. That could be revisited. Secondly, the debate will be about the power of the President of the United States and whether the judiciary is going to rethink the power of the President in terms of invoking this act. Very serious issue, a lot at stake here, power of the presidency and due process of individuals.
Governor Hutchinson, thank you so much, sir, for your insights. We appreciate it.